Afternoon, y'all. It's our last after-school review. Yay! All right. So today we're looking at Mendelian genetics. I've got two kind of short pre-responses for you, and then in the middle we'll kind of reteach genetic stuff. So one of them's on paper if we get to it, and then this one's not. I figured like it all fit on the screen like that so you can probably see it. If you have trouble seeing, you can scoot closer. I don't think, like typically this is the least attended one since we've now like started AP exams. So like nobody's going to be rolling into these front ones. So if you can't see from where you're at, feel free to move around. The sign-in sheet's making its way. Looks like it's long in there, so it'll kind of make its way over. And when it makes its way to you guys, if you'll just like put it on my keyboard. And I should have those in by like Thursday. And yeah, good luck. If you're taking an AP test tomorrow or the next day or whatever, looks like tomorrow morning is English Lit. That's a big one. Comp Sci, and then Thursday, Environmental Science and Psych. So Thursday, I'll be at that one, Environmental and Psych. All right, so back in 2018, we had this question. I feel like on one of our mock exams, we had something a little bit similar, but a little bit different. So give this one a shot. This would be, back then they had some 3-point questions and 4-point questions kind of towards the end. So if I was writing incomplete sentences and stuff, this would be like a 9-10 minute thing. So give it a shot. Is it better if I read it or not? Does that just mess with you? Read it? Okay. So it says, in the tongue sole fish, sex is determined by a combination of genetics and environmental temperature. Genetically male fish have 2 Z chromosomes, ZZ, and genetically female fish have 1 Z chromosome and 1 W chromosome, ZW. When the fish are raised at 22 Celsius, ZZ fish develop into phenotypic males, and ZW fish develop into phenotypic females. However, when fish are raised at 28 degrees Celsius, the Z chromosome is modified, denoted as Z star. Z star W individuals develop as phenotypic males that are fertile and can pass the Z star chromosome to their offspring even when the offspring are raised at 22. A cross between a ZW female and a Z star Z male is shown in the Punnett square below. So, A, predict the percent of phenotypic males among the F1 offspring of the cross shown in the Punnett square if the offspring are raised at 22 degrees. And then B, I'll let you kind of read it on your own. I can scroll this up. If you're watching at home, if you Google 2018 number 7, it'll bring this up if you can't quite see it as well on your screen. And for you guys, there you go. So take a moment and go ahead and move on to part B also. Bless you. Okay, and then part B, if you're cruising along on your own, no worries. Part B, at least one Z or one Z star chromosome is necessary for survival of the fish. A researcher crossed two fish and observed a 2-to-1 ratio of males to females among the offspring. Based on the information, identify the genotype of the male parent in the cross, that'll be a point, and then describe one fitness cost to the female of mating with this particular male. Just like in class, you can work on your own. You can talk with a person nearby if that helps instead. I can't tell you. I mean, I can, but on the real one, I couldn't. So what was it that you asked?
Identify the genotype of the male parent and the cross and use the Punnett square, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cross. I don't think that's
Yeah, I mean, it's a parent, so basically there's the male parent and the female parent. So.
Oh, no, I meant like the cross, because I didn't know talk about the Punnett square or something.
Yeah. Like a cross is if you mate things together. Thank you. Did we miss anybody on the sign-in sheet? Cool. All right, we'll give it another minute or so. You guys look like you're still talking about it and everything. Bless you. This one was, I think it's 2018 number 7. 2018 number 7. And if you're ever trying to look them up, you just Google up AP Bio free response and then the year, it'll bring it up. And if you do just the year, it'll give you all of them. So it'll give you like, this year there was 8, so it'll give you like all 8 free response. Huh?
Is fitness cost, is that like a disadvantage?
Yeah, cost is always like a negative.
stories from being at the middle school.
Can you what?
Can I go like police with them?
Oh, yeah, sure. All right. So the first thing is there's all these different combinations that can be male or female. So everything right here, I didn't really have to think about much. I literally just like pulled it out from this information up here. So they tell me male fish are ZZ. All right, cool. And ZW, they tell me those are female. All right, fine. And that's if they're raised at 22. So at 22, ZZ are males and ZW are females. Okay, so that's kind of repetitive. However, when fish are raised at 28, the Z chromosome is modified, Z star W develop as males. So Z star W is a male, and that'd be at like 28. And they can pass this chromosome on to their offspring even if it's colder. And a cross between a ZW female, I already knew that, and a Z star Z male. So over here, you might be like, wait, what's that one? They told me ZW female and a Z star Z male. So that's how I know that Z star Z is a male. So predict the percentage of phenotypic males among the F1 offspring. So remember, the parents are called P. So like these are the parents. It's kind of like you have parent generation, that's mom plus dad, and then their kids are called F1, bless you. And then their kids' kids, their grandkids are called F2, and their great-grandkids are F3, and so forth. So instead of saying like great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkids, you just say like F6 or something like that. F, it doesn't really matter, but F stands for filial, and apparently in Latin, filial is like the base word, like a root word for sons. Okay, so predict the percentage of phenotypic males among the F1 offspring. Well, if I have a Punnett square, mom and dad are on the outside, so these four are the F1 generation. So now I literally just kind of match this up. I'm like, well, that's a male, and Z star W, that's a male, and ZZ, that's a male, and ZW is a female. So the percent of males is 75%, 3 out of 4. Boy, 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 girl, 75%. If you happen to put a ratio of like 3 males to 1 female, even though they ask for a percentage, they likely would give it to you. So if you did that, but if they ever ask for a percentage, like answer in percentage. All right, part B. How did they come up with this 2-to-1 ratio with a 4-square Punnett square? Yeah, there was death. So it says at least one Z or Z star chromosome is necessary for the survival of the fish. That's kind of like with humans, you have to have an X. The X chromosome has genes on it for brain, heart, lungs, whatever. You don't have to have a Y. Females don't have a Y. But if you had just a Y, you won't make it. So you have to have an X as a human. Apparently, these fish, tongue sole fish, whatever that is, has to have a Z. So it says the researcher crossed 2 fish and observed a 2-to-1 ratio of males to females, so 1 of the 4 died. Based on the information, identify the genotype of the male. So I have to somehow, this is sort of like foreshadowing, I have to somehow create a kid that didn't get a Z, and then they're going to be the daddy. So that means I've got mom. So up here I've only got one possibility for mom that I know of. That's ZW. And if I have a dad that can pass along a W, then that means that kid's a goner. So if the male was Z star W, it would work. I'd have a Z star Z, so that'd be a boy. I'd have a ZW, that'd be a girl. I'd have a Z star W, that'd be a boy. So I'd have 2 males, 1 female, and 1 dead guy. So that's how I could get a 2-to-1 ratio of males to females. So that's a point if I got that right. So I'd identify the genotype of the male parent, and that'd be the, I'd say, male parent. And then describe one fitness cost to the female of mating with this guy. What's the negative of mating with this guy? Yeah, 25% of your kids die. So from like a fitness standpoint, you're trying to pass on as much genetic material as you can. So you want to have as many kids as you can and have as many of them survive as you can. So in ecology, there are animals that their strategy is like, hey, I'm just going to be a negligent parent, but I'll have like 300 kids. So picture fish. I might lay like 300 eggs. It gets fertilized by like all this sperm that's like in this gully or whatever. And so you have 300 kids. If that fish population stays the same size, then that means 298 of them die. Because if you have mom and dad and the fish population stays steady, then when mom and dad die, that's -2. That means they have to be replaced by 2 offspring, right? If they were replaced by more than 2 offspring, then the population went up. If they were replaced by less than 2, it went down. So if we want the world population to decrease, then every couple should have less than 2 kids. And now the next generation would be smaller and smaller, like that, and vice versa. So one of the fitness costs is 1/4 of her offspring are going to die. The opposite kind of approach is the human approach. Humans, we don't have like litters of kids. It's not like puppies where you're like, how many kids do you have? And you're like, I had 11 or something like that. But we're going to sell like 10 of them on Craigslist. Is that still? I don't know if that exists. I don't know where people sell crap. Facebook Marketplace. I don't know where you sell your kids. Maybe that's what the dark web is for. But anyway, so you sell a few, you keep a few. But as humans, instead what we do is like we have like 1 or 2 kids, but the likelihood that they survive is really, really good. We nurture them. Like we're still nurturing you for like 18 years. But puppies, like if a puppy isn't house trained by the time it's a month old, we're like, what's wrong with this stupid dog? And you're like, what about your stupid son over there? He's still in a diaper and he's 3, you know? So a dog, I fully expect, like, a dog is untrainable if it craps in the house and it's like 6 months old. But that dude over there, he's ahead of his time. He's out of diapers at 3 instead of 4. So go figure. So there's kind of 2 strategies. All right, now, what we want to do next is go back and recap the different versions of genetics. Now, the first time we did this in class is a little bit rougher. We ended up playing hangman in a lot of classes, if you remember. So now that you've had it somewhat recently, that was maybe 3 weeks ago, kind of into April, I think, something like that. So we had, I think it was 9 different types of inheritance. So number 1 was autosomal inheritance. We often just call that like Mendel inheritance, like capital B is dominant and I have brown eyes, and lowercase b is recessive and I have blue eyes, something like that. We had like 8 others, I believe. So yeah, I think we had 9 total, 8 others. And then we added on, maybe we added on like mitochondrial. We'll add that on for number 10. All right, I saw a few hands go up. Okay, pleiotropy. Let me write legibly. Pleiotropy. Okay, Addie, I think your hand's up. Yeah. Multiple alleles. You guys started off with the obscure. Huh? Yeah, I've got environmental factors. I'll put that one down there. Huh? Sex linked. Huh? Codominance. Incomplete dominance. Polygenic. Good. And then I always teach this one alongside polygenic. Yeah. Epistasis. Good job. I think we got them all. Pretty sure. All So these three I always kind of teach side by side by side. So just like I always do, if big R is red, little r is white, then all of these, of course, if I get a gene for red and red, then I call that red. And technically, different versions of a gene are called alleles, so each letter is an allele. Remember, like that is an allele, that is a genotype, and then my phenotype would be something like red, like these flowers are red, something like that. So phenotype is the physical characteristic, what you see. All right, so if all these were big R's, then red, red, red. If they were all little r's, white, white, white. For Mendelian inheritance, if I was big R, little r, what color flowers would those be? Red. What about with codominance? What color would big R, little r be? Yeah, both. It'd be red and white. So spots, streaks, something like that. So it'd be both red and white. What about incomplete dominance if I had big R, little r? That one's a blending of the two, pink. And the way I can remember it is our definition of dominance. What was our definition of dominant? Yeah, shows up full strength every time. And so if I think about it, codominance, co means together or both, like we cooperate. And so codominant means they both, red and white, show up full strength. So that means that it's red and white. Incomplete dominance means nobody is completely showing up full strength every time. So it's not quite red, it's not quite white, so we have like the intermediate color. That's why I always pick red and white, because everybody knows what happens if you mix those. You get beyond that, I can't keep up. So primary, secondary, color wheel, something, I don't know. Anytime I blended stuff, it was just always dark. So I'd be like, oh, you blend this together and it makes dark brown. So, okay, let's see. Polygenic versus epistasis. So anybody want to tackle either one of those or kind of compare them, or what do you think? Yeah.
I think it's polygenic. That's the one where you like add together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Epistasis is whenever you have like one that allows this one to happen, allows this one to happen.
Yeah. Polygenic is more additive. So each one is like independent if you want to think of it that way. So if I add A, great. If I don't, I can still add B and it has an impact. I can still add C and it has an impact. With epistasis, this guy and this guy and this guy, they're all dependent on each other. They're like a team. And so if anybody along the way is broken, usually that means my phenotype is broken. So with this one, pretend that skin color followed epistasis. Then I either have this gene, activate this gene, and I have dark skin. Or if this gene was broken, I'd be albino. Or if this was broken, I'd be albino. If they were both broken, I'd be albino. So basically, I either have really dark skin or I have really, really light skin, and that's it. In reality, skin color is polygenic. So each one of these genes that I have makes my skin a little bit darker. So if I've got like 3 of them, my skin is dark. If I have only 2 of them, my skin is lighter. Only 1 of them, my skin is lighter. In reality, there were like 6 alleles for skin color.
Multiple alleles are like blood types, like
Yeah. An example for multiple alleles is like blood type. So normally I've got 2 alleles. I've got like a big R and a little r, and that's it. So 2 is normal. If I ever have more than 2, then we have multiple alleles. Blood types, I can be A, B, O. I could be positive versus negative. So I've got kind of like 4 alleles that we track for blood types. There are more proteins that are on blood cells, but these are the ones that happen to just piss off immune systems the most. So if I can get these to match, the likelihood that we can donate blood from me to this guy is probably okay. There are other proteins on my blood cells that might not match his, but for whatever reason, our immune system is kind of tolerant of those. Your immune system has to be tolerant of some different stuff. Your immune system might be really tolerant of whatever pollen's in the air. Mine currently isn't, and so I have allergy problems, like a lot of you guys. So there's always the fine line between my immune system wants to attack anything that it doesn't recognize. But if it's too sensitive, then I'm attacking everything that I breathe in all the time. I'm breathing in all kinds of stuff that is not me. Everything I breathe in is, you know, not me. All right. It's a weird quote. Everything I breathe in is not me. Yeah. What about my dust? I mean, if I'm breathing in my own dead skin cells, but I try not to think about that too much. So, but yeah, I guess in theory, if you went home and like fluffed your pillow and then you just breathe in a whole bunch of your own dead self. So, thanks for that. All right. What about one of these other 4 that we have left? Yeah, Cheggy. Yeah. So if I'm tracking a disease, for example, or a trait or whatever for sex-linked, it is on chromosomes. Which chromosomes? Yeah, in theory, it could be the X or the Y, but in reality, if it's like a disease, it's always the X, really. If it's anything life or death, it would have to be on the X. Why is that? Yeah, both males and females have to carry it. So I can't have any gene completely required for life on the Y chromosome. Otherwise, females wouldn't exist. Is it possible? I'm a male. So is it possible that I have a mutation on my Y chromosome? Sure, but it shouldn't be life or death because Y chromosomes aren't necessary for life. So we call them sex-linked. That's what most books call them, but some books will even call them X-linked because they so heavily favor X chromosomes. So that means carried on the X typically. All right, real quick while we're on sex-linked, let's say that I'm looking at a pedigree and like I notice I'm tracking some disease and I notice that like there are 15 males that have the disease and there's like 2 females that have the disease. Is it probably sex-linked? Yeah, again, you haven't seen the pedigree, but like I'm going to start from a point of like, yeah, that's probably sex-linked. So now, what am I going to ask you next about it? It's sex-linked. Is it dominant or recessive? So I want to figure out, is it like this? Or is it like this? So take a moment, see if you can figure it out. Is the disease dominant or is the disease recessive? And then I'll ask you, once you figure out why, or once you figure out what it is, I'm going to ask to see if you can tell me why it is. It's way more common in males. All right, so what do you think? Is it sex-linked dominant or sex-linked recessive? It is recessive. Some of you guys, we might have done this enough to where you're like, I just kind of remember that. Cool. But as far as the reason why, for me to have the disease, if it's recessive, if I'm a male and it's like this, if I get a lowercase g, I've got the disease, that's it. If I'm a female and I happen to get a lowercase g, am I destined to have the disease yet? No, I've got to draw a lowercase g twice. So let's say my odds of getting a lowercase g, let's say that out there in the world, there's like, we'll do a total of 100. There's like 99 of these for every one of these. So now that means 1 out of 99 males, 1 out of 100 males, sorry, would get a little g. So how common is this disease? 1 in 100 males have it. What about a female? How many females? What's the fraction of females? 1 out of how many females would get the disease? If I've got 100 total, 99 plus 1 is 100. And with males, if most of the genes out there are good, like capital G, then I've got a 1 out of 100 chance of getting the disease. Because 1 out of 100 letter G's are little g. So what about females? Yeah, it's 1 out of 10,000. And that's because for a female to get the disease, she has to be little g, little g. Well, what are the odds that she gets that little g? 1 in 100. What are the odds that she gets that little g? 1 in 100. What are the odds that she gets both? Multiply. So that's 1, and then it looks like I got 4 zeros. So 1 out of 10,000. So it's way more common in males compared to females, if it was like 1 in 99 or whatever. Up here, it was something different. That's like 7.5 times different. So sex-linked means it's going to be on the sex chromosomes, probably the X. And if it's recessive, it'll be way more common in males, and then the opposite is true. If it's dominant, it'll be way more common in females. All right, we've got 3 more. We've got pleiotropy, environmental, and mitochondrial. Anybody want to hit one of those? Yeah, Layla. Yeah. So I might have a gene that codes for multiple phenotypes. I might have this one gene, and it determines like phenotype 1, phenotype 2, phenotype 3. And those 3 phenotypes might be pretty different. They might not all be like hair color, eye color, skin color, to where you're like, yeah, but isn't that just like melanin, 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 and I just call it 3 different phenotypes, but it's really like, do you put melanin in your body? That kind of thing. But it can be kind of like you had mentioned with the cats, where it's like my fur color can determine my hearing and stuff like that. One of the ways that pleiotropy happens, that I think I mentioned whenever we did this in class recently, like a few weeks ago, was with alternate splicing. So I get a gene, and I splice it one way, and it makes this phenotype. I splice it a different way, and all of a sudden it has something to do with kidneys. I splice it a different way, and all of a sudden it has something to do with lungs. Yeah.
Mitochondrial is genes that are related to the mother's gene.
Yeah. So with mitochondria, it's just genes passed only through mom. With this, though, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. With pleiotropy, this is also why, if you hear about like gene editing, like they have this thing called CRISPR. They now have a CRISPR lab that you can do in high school, but it's about $240 per class period. So I have 5 classes, so that's like $1,200 to do it. But it's pretty cool. Basically, you can go in, identify a gene, cut it out, and replace it with another gene. And so it's called CRISPR, and it stands for I used to be able to hack together some of the letters. No, it's all like sciencey words. The CRISPR is short for cluster, intersperse, repeat something. I don't remember. And so with CRISPR, one of the things that people are like, hey, you know, over here in cells in a petri dish, we can like fix this heart condition. Or somebody has this disease and we can like cut out the bad gene and replace it with a good gene. And you're like, why don't we just do that? Well, because when you start messing with a gene, you might be tracking what's happening to the liver, but it might be doing something else over here in like the heart or the brain, and we don't know to look for it. Because I might not know that this gene right here is used in like 8 different places in my body. So I might get it to where it works fine for this, but maybe it doesn't splice correctly for the rest of my body. So currently we aren't CRISPRing humans legally. So mitochondrial we mentioned. Mitochondrial DNA is just passed on through my mom. So my mom, my mitochondrial DNA I got from my mom, who got it from her mom, who got it from her mom. And the way that that shows up on a Punnett square, we did one in class, and it'll just show that like the mom is passing the disease on to every single kid. And then her daughters can pass it on to all of her kids. Dads can't pass it on, only moms pass it on. So we'll just say your mom. And it's on topic. The last one, environmental factors. Huh? Yeah, like epigenetics, different things in the environment can turn genes on or turn genes off. So we'll say environment equal on, off genes. So when we first learned it, it was like the Arctic fox, where it might be temperature could make their fur deposit pigment or not deposit pigment. So when it's warmer, we turn on the genes that say make my fur dark. And when it's colder, we turn those genes off, and now my fur is light. As we age, we turn off the genes for put dark pigment in my hair, and our hair gets gray. And we think that that happens because with like silverback apes, they get respect. Because out in the wild, if you're old, that means you're kind of a badass because you survived, right? I like that. Yeah. So the old apes get respect. And the younger ones, not as much. So it even works out in life. I have a friend, Chris, and he's my age, shaves his head and all that. Kind of like you do if you're starting to get to where like you're like, I'm not gonna comb my hair over. I'll just shave it. Except he looks cool with a shaved head. I'd look like a total idiot with a shaved head. And he'll even say, like, if you're just out and about places, he's a petroleum engineer, and so he'll be with like just like all these dudes, and every once in a while they get mad and they fight and stuff like that. It's kind of a rough job. And so he'll even say, like, if you have like a goatee and there's a lot of gray in it, people tend to like leave that guy alone. Whereas if you shave, you're more likely to have people like mess with. The younger you look, the more likely they are to try to like mess around with you. And if you look older, they kind of don't. So there's no scientific meaning behind that. That's just his observation. But anyway, that helps you remember environmental factors because of a dumb story. There you go. Huh?
Wait, what were they fighting over? Like...
Oh, just a whole bunch of dudes, so anything. All right. I think that's all of them. All right, any questions on any of those? Okay, the most common ones?
For the sexually trait,
Mm-hmm.
if it's got down to the X chromosome, the males always get it? Can you connect with, like, because they only have one X chromosome? And
yeah, so with sex linked, you can get it from your mom or your dad because females have 2 and males have 1, but it comes down to if it's recessive, then it's more common on males. We only get 1 X chromosome, so like if I draw the recessive trait, I'm done. If I'm a female and I draw the recessive trait, I might still be okay. So let's say that little g was like bad, it was a disease. Then if I draw the little g, maybe a 1 in 100 shot, I'm in trouble. As a female, for me to get little g, the odds of that are 1 out of 100 times 1 out of 100. So females, if it's sex-linked recessive, females are less likely to get it. If it's sex-linked dominant, males are more likely to get it. As far as the ones that they talk about the most on the AP Bio test, regular Mendel inheritance is the most common. After that, I would say, if I had to rank these, I'd be like A, B, C, and then these are tied for D. E. That's how I'd rank them as far as like how often, if I'm just thinking back of like looking at old tests and looking at old College Board question banks and stuff like that, all of them are fair game. But I see that the most, then that, then pretty much there and there, more or less. All right. Huh? Kind of like allopatric speciation is more like evolution. So allopatric speciation and sympatric speciation, allopatric would be like if I've got a group of animals here on some location, and then some of them, like let's say they're in North America, and some animals happen to somehow like make it all the way the heck out there to like Hawaii, then now they would evolve into new species because they're in a different, allo means different, because they're in a different location, allopatric. Sympatric is if they're like nearby and they're still evolving separately from each other. So if I had some birds that live in Keller and other birds that live in Keller and they were evolving apart or they weren't merging together, that would be sympatric. If it's because they've got like 1,500 miles of ocean between them, that'd be allopatric. Yeah, no problem. All right, let's try an ecology type question. I haven't asked you any ecology type questions yet because they're usually the easier ones, but I definitely want you to like see some. So this one is a little bit bigger. I'll put it up on the screen, but I've also got it copied for you. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There you go. 2, 4, 5. I think I got it on my computer over there. Yeah. 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you? Thank you. All right, so this one, if you're at home and you're looking for it, it's 2022, number 5. So if you search up the AP Bio free responses from 2022 and then scroll down to number 5, you're good. And one thing to note, they do it here in Part A. They ask about invasive species a lot. That's like one of their favorite ecology topics is invasive species. and you might not be there yet, but when you get to part C and it says using the template provided, like for community B, like this is the template provided. So you can just draw on that. Mm-hmm. Do what? Yeah, beside the ultimate review. Mm-hmm. And like if you, whenever you turn that in, then you're totally done with grades for me. Unless you want to do some voluntary, like you can do more for homework grades. Uh-huh. For the ultimate review, as long as I get it before the AP test, like even if it's that morning you stop by or something like that is fine, or the day before or whatever. So my main goal is, it isn't really like, did you turn it in during your class, but it's mainly just like, did you do it before the test so that it was a review? Like you brought it with you when you were checking in and you handed it to me as you were like walking in to take the AP test, it's fine. You're welcome. Yeah, because a bunch of students will be very hit or miss for the next week and a half. All right. If you're not done, that's okay, but I want to make sure that we have time to go over this and then still leave at 5. So every year they always ask some ecology questions in here. So usually it's on the 4-point questions, and they'll have like 1 or 2 of them or 1.5 of them that feel like kind of ecology, evolution type stuff. If you mix ecology and evolution, there might be like 8 points total, something like that. So usually out of the 4-point questions, the very last one so far has always been molecular genetics for the last 3 years. And then one of these 4 has always been out of Unit 3, which was enzymes, cellular respiration, and photosynthesis. And then the other 2 have basically been like ecology, sort of like logic ecology like this, evolution, that kind of thing. All right, so this one. Hey, it says, describe a characteristic of a community that makes a species invasive in that community but not invasive in a different one. So I bring over some animal and whatever. I bring over some other animal and all of a sudden we're like, that one's an invasive species. What made this one invasive? Or some plant or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. If it's brand new and there's nothing there that's good at eating it, there's no disease that's good at taking it out or something like that, then it's going to grow unchecked. Normally what would happen is a population grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, but then something kind of keeps it in check. Just like business, once all of a sudden some business starts doing something, they're like, Uber, we'll deliver food. And all of a sudden somebody else is like, all right, we'll do that too, you know, or we give people rides to the airport, and like Uber does it. And then we're like, all right, we're called Lyft. What do you do? And they're like, same thing as these guys. And there you go. So if I don't have any natural predators or any sort of natural things that are good at taking me down. B, explain why removing species PP1 will have a greater effect on community B than community A. So why is it that if I remove this, that's a bigger deal than if I remove this? Huh? Yeah, there are fewer producers over here. I just got rid of like 50% of the producers over here. Over here, I just got rid of 1 out of 3. I got rid of a third of the producers. So here, I got rid of 50% versus a third of producers. Yeah, but when you really get it, like right here, like all of these guys are like dependent on these two, so like that's going to cut in half, whereas it's possible that like this might more than half would survive, you know? All right, next up. So that one just comes down to like ratios. That's what I mean by like logic. Like, yeah, this is in the setting of ecology, but that one's really less about something that I would learn directly in an ecology class. Okay, this one was interesting. An invasive species, INV, that eats individuals of species SC2, secondary consumer 2, is introduced into community B, so that was this one over here. Using the template and the space provided for your answer for community B, indicate the feeding relationship for this invasive species by correctly placing INV to represent the invasive species and an arrow to represent the feeding relationship. And so you're like, all right, that's not bad at all. I basically just need to draw an arrow that goes to INV. And that's what I would have done. So I always, whenever I'm skimming through these questions to try to find them, and I'll skim through, and then I'll sit down and like jot down my own answers, and then I'll go check just to see if I missed something. I missed something. So you draw an arrow, and it says like, you know, INV, or draw an arrow, INV. I thought that was fine because I'm looking at these as like food webs. I know they can represent energy pyramids, but right now they haven't really drawn them as energy pyramids, so I wasn't thinking of them as energy pyramids. So you had to draw an arrow going to INV, so it would look like this. SC, and then you just have like INV, but it distinctly says that INV has to be at the same level as TC2, so that I know that it's at like the next trophic level up on the energy pyramid that's not on here. So I was just going to be like, all right, INV, but it's like, no, that INV has to be up here at this level. I wouldn't have thought of that. I understand it, but I didn't realize that this was an energy pyramid. I thought it looked more food webby. They didn't take it. Like they specifically said, no, like I can show you guys. It specifically says, oops, 2018 scoring guidelines. No, that's the questions. Give me 1 second. I've got it. It just keeps pulling up different ones. That's the one I want. Over here. INV should be added in a position that is horizontally aligned with TC2, where you don't get credit. So I wouldn't have gotten credit. All right. See you guys later. Yep.
You got it right.
You're welcome. All right. See you guys later.